In today's video episode, we're going to look at how to use an action planning template. This is a great tool both for personal organization and for time management, and it can help you achieve all the different kinds of goals that you have. Now, specifically, we are going to focus on creating an action plan for skill development. But as said, once you're familiar with using the tool for a skill development goal, you can apply it to achieving other goals in both your professional and your personal lives. My focus today is on giving you a methodology that is as effective as possible, while also being as simple as possible, because a methodology can only help you if you actually use it. So we're going to examine an effective and efficient action planning template that contains just the 5 core elements you need in an action plan to achieve your goals. See you in a minute. So once again, it will help you better understand the concept of action planning if we start with an analogy. Let's imagine that you are planning to mountain bike across a large body of land from one city to another or from one coast to another. To achieve that goal, you need to know where you're starting from and, of course, where you want to end up. You can't simply get on your bike and just ride until you're feeling tired. But oddly, that is kind of what people do when it comes to skill development. We say things like, I want to be good at, or I want to be better at, which expresses a wish, but it doesn't specify where you are today and where you want to go. So first up, you need to define your start point and your end point. What else would you need in a plan to mountain bike across a country? Well, you need to break the total goal into component pieces. Let's say that you're planning to bike across Sri Lanka, which is round about 240 kilometers from one coast to the other. You would find it helpful to break that distance into perhaps 4 or 5 stages, milestones, or checkpoints. You also need a measure to tell that you're in the right place when you think that you've reached a checkpoint. You need to know that you are actually at the correct mountain or town and not off track somewhere in the jungle. Finally, you also need a time frame within which you expect to reach each of your planned checkpoints. An action plan that contains these elements will help you to get organized and to manage your time efficiently. So let's look now at the action planning template that contains these elements to help you achieve your skill development goals. This is the action planning template we're going to use. You can see it includes all 5 important elements: where you are today, where you plan to reach, the component pieces of the total journey, a measure for each of the milestones, and a date for completing each stage. In today's illustration, we're going to use the action planning template for developing skill in listening effectively. Now, listening effectively is one of those communication skills that we all secretly think we're really good at, in the same way that we all secretly believe we're above average drivers. However, research studies inside organizations and companies show that we're really nowhere near as good as we think we are in real life. Studies also show that strong listening skills are positively related to good job performance. So improving your skills in this area can boost your career success. Right then, let's start an action plan to develop improved listening skills during meetings with your team, your manager, business partners, and also customers. You can see here that you need to make an evidence-based assessment of where you are today. One simple approach to doing this is to use a free online assessment tool that can give you a score. In preparation for this video, for example, I looked at several different online sites for assessing effective listening skills, and I chose one that's a self-administered questionnaire which gives you a score out of 40, where 10 indicates that you rarely use effective listening during meetings. A score of 20 indicates that you sometimes use effective listening. A score of 30 indicates you mostly use effective listening. And a score of 40 indicates you always use effective listening during key meetings. Now, I'm not going into detail on the scale or the questionnaire that you might choose for this section because that would make this particular video much longer. Simply allow me to point out that you should look for a measuring tool that has some degree of authority and validity. But for today's purpose, all that matters is that you do have a measurable way of defining where you are today and where you want to end up. So to start our action planning template, we're going to imagine that the assessment tool you use gives you a score of 20 out of 40, indicating that you sometimes use effective listening during key meetings. That's likely a realistic starting point for most of us. Next, you need to choose an endpoint that's achievable in the sort of coming 5 to 8 weeks. Now, I don't recommend going longer than 8 weeks out. You see, if your goal is too far off, there's no real pressure on you to do anything. Instead, it's more effective to focus on making some meaningful improvement in the short term, and then when you achieve that short-term goal, you can set the next goal after that. So let's set an achievable but meaningful goal. Say that you want to improve your score from 20 out of 40 up to 30, meaning that you engage in effective listening behavior during meetings often, rather than just sometimes. Now you have 3 sections left to complete. Break the skill into component pieces, define a measure to verify that you've worked against each stage, and a target date for completing each of the stages. When it comes to breaking the skill into component pieces, I've chosen to build from an expert model for effective listening that was developed by 3 British researchers. These researchers divide effective listening skills into 3 components. Sensing the other people, which is behavior intended to listen for what is not being said, such as how the customer is feeling or the real problem that your manager is facing. Processing content. These are behaviors relating to accurately capturing what is being said at the meeting. And responding appropriately. These are behaviors that actively demonstrate you are listening, such as making eye contact, nodding, and maybe even leaving your phone out of meetings so that you don't run the risk of being distracted. Now we're going to set a measure to achieve against each of these components, and finally a time frame for achieving each milestone. So for example, you might set some measurable milestone to achieve within the first 2 weeks, another in the following 2 weeks, and another in the 2 weeks after that. Lastly, we want to bring these 3 pieces together into some overall practice sessions in which we attempt to perform all components at once, a bit like having a few practice rounds of tennis after you've worked on improving your forehand, your backhand, and your serve. And now you have a specific step-by-step action plan for getting organized and managing your time to achieve a goal of improving your effective listening skills during important meetings in a measurable and meaningful way. And now for your action steps for this week. As a first exercise, you could practice using the template for any goal in your life. However, I do recommend that you genuinely try out the action planning template on a skill that you want to improve in. When you've mapped out your action planning template, the next step is to act on your action plan to achieve measurable improvement. Secondly, the work that we've done today will be even more useful to you if you understand the concepts of incremental mindset, deliberate practice, and micro-learning. So if you haven't yet viewed the videos on this channel about those concepts, well, you should do that also. That's all for this week. Good luck with your follow-up steps and see you again in the next video.